So, with the recent news of OnePlus not supporting the OnePlus 7 series anymore, including this OnePlus 7T, I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about whether this is still worth it or not, even if you don't get any updates anymore. By the way, if you are curious, this one is running Android 11 and I don't have any updates currently for it. So, the OnePlus 7T. Funny enough, this was my second event and my last event, proper event, in the UK when it comes to a phone release. And I actually remember that quite well, meeting of course Mquan, thank you by the way still for the drive, that saved a lot of time even though he missed the plane. And of course talking to Daniel, Son of Tech, and Tech Care and some other people there as well. It was really lovely to meet them. But that was my first proper big event. I had one before in the UK and still haven't had my face and chips. Which is criminal, but anyway, let's continue. When it comes to the OnePlus 7T, however, I actually never used the phone itself. I never experienced it apart from that event. Never had the possibility, never had the right contact to get this phone in. Even though I talked to the owner on that event itself as well, I never used it. So, the OnePlus 7T, right now, it's of course quite old, or is it? Well, surprisingly, this is from September 2019. For some reason, I really felt like this was older. I don't know why, but it just felt like it was older for me. But that makes the question better whether this is worth it or not still till this day. There are some things that you have to keep in mind though. As stated, it doesn't support any updates anymore and therefore there are things like banking that I wouldn't advise on a phone like this. This phone, whether it's worth it or not, comes more down to what kind of usage it is. If you are using it for calling, texting, WhatsApp and so on, I really don't see a problem with using this device. There are some really good things about it. It still has a really solid display, although we do have of course your, how do they call that? A drop cutout? Top notch? Anyway, that one. And of course we have some ungodly bezels. I'm joking here. You do have some bezels, but I really don't care. But in terms of that, you do get a flat display and overall a 90Hz AMOLED display, which is still this day really solid with good viewing angles. And because it doesn't have an edge to it, it doesn't have any distortion on any angle as well. Therefore, I would say if you want to use it for simple things, calling and so on, maybe as your second phone, a work phone or something like that, definitely the OnePlus 7T is without a doubt still worth it. I bought this for 115 euros. That makes it a really easy pick. For 117 euros you do get quite a lot of fun. Comes with of course 8 GB of RAM, and whether you have 128 or 256 GB of internal memory doesn't really matter then, depending on your use. But when it comes to the phone itself as well, it does run on that Snapdragon 855, which still is fast enough for anyone. Now the big question of course also is whether you can take some solid images with it. Let me show you the answer instead of telling you whether it's still able to capture some really good shots.
In the corner of my best friend's sofa, you were getting buzzed on rum and cola. Wasn't brave enough yet just to talk to you. Not a smooth talker under pressure. Sweaty palms ain't making it much better. Something about you feels so special. Prettier from the minute that I met you. Trying to get your attention, you make me nervous. In the corner of my best friend's sofa, you were getting buzzed on rum and cola. Wasn't brave enough yet just to talk to you.
And then of course there are some other things that you have to take in consideration when using this phone. How's the audio quality, for instance? It's still really solid. You do get a dual speaker front and of course the bottom itself, using that as a stereo speaker effect, and it still sounds really good. No issues here. Of course it still misses out on the 3.5mm headphone jack and micro SD, which I love on my mobile phone, but honestly that's something that isn't surprising, and I guess For 2019 standards, pretty normal, and these days as well, sadly. So overall, the question is simple: whether the OnePlus 7T is still worth it. I don't think it's worth it when you want to use it for instance, banking and so on, because I feel like that you want to have properly secured, right? And not having updates anymore really makes it less secure than you want it to be. So banking and so on, I wouldn't advise on a phone like this. But there is of course somewhat of an Android 12 update. I just don't have it, but according to GSM Arena, you do get an Android 12 update. It just, I guess, depends on the region that you are from. For me, it still runs Android 11, and therefore I definitely wouldn't advise banking on a phone like this. But then again, this one cost me 115 euros. For 115 euros, you get a good display, great audio quality, camera that is still quite capable, even though it really depends on, of course, the user as well. But when it comes to the OnePlus 7T, for 115 euros, this is definitely a good phone to have next to your main device. I would advise it more like that, especially because of the updates. But if you are using it for calling, WhatsApp and simple things, I really don't see an issue in using the OnePlus 7T as your main device. It still does most of the main things really well, and overall there is hardly anything to complain about, and it holds up quite well. It's just a shame to not see any updates anymore for the OnePlus 7T, because I think if OnePlus supports this phone longer, definitely this still holds a really good value, especially for like 115, 120 euros. This is a phone that I can easily recommend. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this short video about the OnePlus 7T, whether it's still worth it or not. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe and all that stuff, and talk to you guys in the next.